On behalf of Aleph Book Company and Ashoka University, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to a truly special occasion, the launch of the Undying Light, a personal history of independent India, the latest work by the eminent thinker, diplomat, and writer, Mr. Gopalkrishna Gandhi. This remarkable memoir in history of India after independence by one of India's most distinguished public intellectuals begins with his memories at the age of 3 and expands into numerous encounters with personalities, both Indian and foreign, eminent as well as little known, and original insights into key events and turning points of modern history, many of which he was an eyewitness to as Secretary to Presidents R. Venkataraman and K.R. Narayanan, and as Governor of West Bengal and Bihar. To grace this evening, we have with us a distinguished guest of honor, an icon of Indian cinema, and a cultural ambassador in her own right, Mrs. Sharmila Tagore. Can we have a huge round of applause for her? We're deeply honored to have all of you to celebrate a book that promises to illuminate minds and spark meaningful conversations. Thank you for joining us. To commence this evening, I would request Mr. Somak Chaudhary, Vice Chancellor, Ashoka University, to welcome the esteemed guests along with the audience.
Good evening. It's my privilege to welcome you to this very unique and wonderful evening for the launch of a very, very interesting book by Professor Gopalkrishna Gandhi. I represent Ashoka University at this occasion. Ashoka is now in its 10th year of existence, and I'm sure everybody's heard of the university. And so that, I think, in the age of a university is quite unique in 10 years to become well known as a liberal arts educational institution, a very new kind of institution where students and faculty come together in celebrating knowledge as a whole without many boundaries. Professor Gopalkrishna Gandhi has been a distinguished professor at Ashoka University for many years, and he embodies a lot of what the university has to offer in its interdisciplinarity and also in its concentration on the basic areas of the liberal arts and sciences. It's my privilege to have our students listen to him on a daily basis when he's on campus, and I've been privileged myself to attend many of his lectures. It's wonderful to see all of you here to come and celebrate his new book. I'm also deeply honored to welcome Sharmila Tagore, one of my icons, of course, growing up in the age group that I am, to be here, that she's here to launch this wonderful book. Thank you again for coming, and we look forward to a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Ray Chaudhary, for those insightful words. I now invite the publisher of Aleph Book Company, Ainla Ozukum, to say a few words.
Esteemed Chief Guest, Ms. Sharmila Tagore, distinguished panelists, Dr. Mukherjee, Ms. Roy, Mr. Ahluwalia, and guests and friends, we're delighted to have you with us at the official launch of Mr. Gopalkrishna Gandhi's extraordinary memoir, The Undying Light. As publishers, we are honored to have published many of Gandhi's best books, but in many ways, this could be said to be the high watermark of his literary career and evolution as a public intellectual. Our high-powered panel will discuss many of the thoughts and insights that make this book a masterpiece, but let me dwell briefly on a few. First, this book is an extraordinary feat of bringing independent India's history to life vividly and honestly, at a time when unscrupulous individuals and scholars are busy rewriting and reinventing history for their own questionable ends, and the need for unbiased, objective, and scrupulous honest histories is greater than ever before, and the Undying Light fulfills that need. Next is a tremendous memoir. Early in the book, we witness a 2.5-year-old Gopal being brought by his sister Tara to see the bullet-ridden body of his paternal grandfather, Mahatma Gandhi. The way in which the author describes this dramatic event brought tears to my eyes when I first read the manuscript. Poignant, sensitive, and described with remarkable flair, that episode sets the scene for everything that is to follow in the book. The reader is given in-depth portraits of Rajaji, the author's much-loved maternal grandfather, and a host of other distinguished family members, many of whom played prominent roles in the early life of India's independence. As a member of the fledgling Indian bureaucracy, we are shown how the government works in the districts. The author then embarks on a diplomatic career in Sri Lanka. As the decades pass, he comes to occupy several important positions, among them becoming secretary to 2 presidents, R. Venkataraman and K.R. Narayanan, and then going on to distinguished diplomatic assignments in world capitals. In the final years of his professional career, he would become the governor of West Bengal and also of Bihar. His lineage and the positions he held during the various phases of his career gave him unique insights into many turning points in the history of independent India. Moreover, his deep curiosity about what was taking place in the country for much of its existence gives the reader a remarkable picture of some of the most seminal events that took place in the country, as also some of its most notable personalities. Among the events the author writes about are the adoption of the Indian Constitution, the first general elections of 1951-52, the Sino-Indian War of 1962, the emergency of 1975-77, the JP movement, Operation Blue Star, the assassination of Mrs. Gandhi, Mandal, the tragedy of Kashmir, demolition of the Babri Masjid, the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, hijacking of IC-1814, the Gujarat riots, and much more. Stalwarts who appear in these pages include top politicians, illustrious cultural figures, and other makers of history. I could go on describing the book's stellar qualities, but for much longer, but I won't, as we have a distinguished panel who will extol the numerous wonders of the book. Suffice it for me to reiterate in closing that all of us at Aleph are greatly honored and privileged to be publishers of The Undying Light. Thank you.
Thank you, Ainla, for such a vivid description of the book. We now progress towards one of the crucial moments of the evening, the book release ceremony. May I please invite Mrs. Tagore and Mr. Gopalkrishna Gandhi on this stage to formally release The Undying Light. I also invite Ainla to join them for the unveiling ceremony.
This one? Okay.
Thank you so much. I request Mrs. Tagore to please share a few words. If you want, if you like, you can sit and talk.
Gopal, friends, and distinguished guests, I'm delighted and honored to launch and release this new book of Gopalkrishna Gandhi. I cannot claim for myself the privilege of being one of Gopal's close friends, but over the years I've got to know him a little, and more importantly, from a distance, I have admired and respected him. It is for this very special reason I accepted this honor when I was requested to launch this book. Gopal, as all of you know, has had a rich and varied life and career. This gave him the opportunity to observe, sometimes at very close quarters, many of the key and landmark events of independent India. In a wonderful and enviable way, in this book, Gopal interweaves these events with his own personal journey. Gopal has that rare combination of being a bureaucrat, diplomat, and scholar, all that at the same time. And Gopal, because of the positions he held, was privy to events and discussions held within the portals of Rashtrapati Bhavan and Raj Bhavan in Kolkata. What struck a chord in me in this book, Gopal's enduring optimism. In April 1941, 4 months before his death, Rabindranath Tagore wrote an address in Bengali, which is often read as his last will and testament. The essay, written when the world was engulfed by war and devastation, has the English title, The Crisis of Civilization, a striking phrase that carries resonances for our own times. At the very end of that essay, Rabindranath affirmed his faith in what he called unvanquished man. The Bengali words he used, Aparajito Manush. For me, that carries even more power. Gopal has affirmed his faith in the undying light of India. One cannot but bask in his faith and the warmth of that undying light. I would like to end by congratulating Gopal for writing this book that lifts us from the well of gloom and despair. I also want to convey to him my best wishes for his 80th birthday and for the years to come. So Gopal, please accept my Namro Namaskar. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tagore, for that moving address. It is now time to hear from the author himself. May I please request Mr. Gandhi to please enlighten us with a few words.
A very dreaded moment at book launches is when the author comes up with a copy of his book with many bookmarks in it. That is when the phones come on and people begin to look at their watches. So I will not read for too long or detain you more than is necessary to share the spirit of independent India. It doesn't start too happily, but the book starts with a painting which was brought to my notice by Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee. It is done in the Bengal style and has Gandhi and his small band of what he called pilgrims in Noakhali. I will not describe the painting further, leave it for those who access the book to do so. But we'll start with his description as gleaned by me from his own writings. Bengal and Bihar were aflame in 1946, 1947. The fire was to spread. But Gandhi's pilgrimage, as he called it, in Bengal, starting in Noakhali, was like this. Gandhi reached the burning, bleeding area in November 1946. He walked from village to village with a handful of chosen associates, with only partial and unsteady responses from the Muslim majority to own guilt, atone for its crime, and restore confidence in the Hindu minority. In the village of Dottopada, physically exhausted and worn by a daily self-imposed ration of less than 600 calories to expiate for what was happening in Bihar, where the opposite was happening, where the Hindu majority had traumatized the Muslim minority. Gandhi saw that those not killed in Noakhali had been to a large extent converted. These included a deaf mute, to use a phrase which has been used earlier, but not a sensitive phrase to use, but a deaf mute who showed him tied up in a rag his shikha that had been forcibly cut. As Gandhi emerged from a dwelling there, his attention was attracted by a Tibetan spaniel running a few steps past him, turning back and again beckoning. Gandhi's associates did what most associates would do in such a situation. They tried to drive the dog away. But he stopped them. He said, "Don't you see? Don't you see the animal wants to say something to us?" The dog then led them to the skeletons of his master and several others done to death. What he had seen, he told a group of Muslim leaguers, was the very negation of Islam. It was often a one night in one village for Gandhi and his small band in Noakhali. He held a prayer meeting every evening with both Hindus and Muslims attending. Not infrequently, the Muslims walked out when the hymn Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram was sung. Very soon, he was in Bihar. It is astonishing how the dead become a count in a numbers game. The people killed in Bihar in cold blood were men, women, and children. The rioting had spread from Patna to the villages. In a village called Bir, Gandhi heard of an old Muslim woman said to be 110 having been butchered. He asked the people there, "How could you see this before your eyes? I will not rest, nor will I let others rest. मैं यहाँ गांव से गांव भटकूंगा और उसकी हड्डियों से पूछूंगा, तुझे किसने मारा?" A few days later, Delhi beckoned him. When in Delhi, staying in Bhangi colony, completely unguarded, thanks to his own stubborn choice, he held his prayer meetings again. We have today archivists from the Hindustan Times present here, and thanks to them, I've accessed one photograph by the Hindustan Times photographer Baburam Gupta, which has this 80-year-old, then 2.5, back to camera, engaging his Bapuji in the warbling nonsense grandparents love to hear from their grandchildren. All my siblings and others can be seen in that photograph, enjoying the rollick in a land dreamily removed from the grim reality of a nation in murderous flux. Everybody is laughing in that picture. I'm not sure if it is at me, with me, about me, but everybody is laughing. Perhaps, somewhere in that laughter lurks a nervousness about the present and future of happiness in India. Mondays were days of silence. I remember nothing of that photograph, thank goodness, just as well. Pyare Lal, the great secretary and biographer, writes in the last phase, when Gopu, as the very absurd sounding home name was given to me, Gopu set everybody, including his grandfather, roaring with laughter by mimicking his भाइयों और बहनों, आप शांत हो जाइए, आप शांत हो जाइए. Mimicked by me, this provoked laughter. Referring to it in his prayer meeting, Gandhi spoke of the two nations that were coming into being, referring to the need for Shanti. It was not long thereafter, when one day, called the 30th of January by the play of calendars, my sister Taru was minding her 2.5-year-old brother when a scurry of activity, more scurried than the usual, saw her parents rush out, leaving her bewildered to continue minding me. A few minutes later, someone ran into the house saying, Come, you have to go to Birla House. There is a car waiting for you. Bapuji has been... That's it. Grabbing me in a few seconds of incoherent reflex action, she went down the flight of stairs and into the car, which sped like lightning to where her parents had gone. The gates of Birla House had already been shut, tight shut, to keep out a large crowd that had already gathered there within minutes. Sentries stood on duty. हमें अंदर जाने दीजिए, she said. नहीं जा सकते हैं. मैं बापूजी की पोती हूँ, she said. This had to and did work. Our parents were there, already in the room where Bapuji had been laid on the floor. Completely puzzled and uncomprehending, I was deposited by my sister on my mother's lap. Henri Cartier-Bresson, who had managed access to the room with his magical camera, has captured the scene in a hazy photograph. Seeing the air and the hum of words floating in the air, I said, in a repeat of my old mimicry, "Sab shant ho jaye, sab shant ho jaye." And for good measure, I added, बापूजी अभी सो रहे हैं, इतनी आवाज़ क्यों कर रहे हैं, सब शांत हो जाइए, precipitating a renewed bout of muffled sobbing by those around me. The journey of the cortege from Birla House to Rajghat has been filmed. Margaret Bourke-White's photographs are celebrated. One of them has a photograph of a child playing with the sand around the now cold fire on the day the ashes were being collected. I knew something had happened to my Bapuji, something which had made everyone cry, but I did not know more. I had incidentally not had a haircut for quite a while, and a long and wide swathe of overgrown hair on my forehead. I am playing in that photograph with sand, lifting it up, letting the grains in my hand drop in what may be called a sand fall, playing meaninglessly with sand like nothings has been the story of my life. Coming 8 decades on, I recall a visit when my wife Tara and I were in Kolkata by the late Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, accompanied by Gurcharanji. I was not an expert by any stretch of imagination in bilateral relations or external relations. But I do not know why. Dr. Manmohan Singh suddenly said, Gopal, tell me, what should we do with Pakistan? My answer is of no consequence. His question is. Dr. Manmohan Singh was the last living Indian statesman I have known. When he died in the demising days of 2024, I could not but think that civility in Indian public life had shriveled, decency withered. He was in office, not in a war room. His table was a desk, it was not a battle board. His pen wrote, it did not decree. Siyasat is a Hindustani word for politics, and sharafat for honesty and decency. Manmohan Singh had shown that there was space in siyasat for sharafat and for sharafat in siyasat. The Indian sky has decidedly darkened by the departure of that good man. The sun sank on 2024 disappointed. But I could not but remember on that New Year's end that when Nehru said back in 1948 in his spontaneous broadcast on the 30th of January, the light has gone out of our lives and there is darkness everywhere, he quickly added that the light will be seen, the world will see it, and it will give solace to innumerable hearts. For that light represented something more than the immediate present. It represented the living, the eternal truths, reminding us of the right path, drawing us from error, taking this ancient country to freedom. The eternal truths. I close, friends, by saying a dog, a mere dog in Dattapada, showed Gandhi the truth of Dattapada. Let no one stoop to the polemic. What is truth? We can leave that to Pontius Pilate. You and I know what truth is in our hearts. As clearly as we know, do we not, what lies are when we hear them? What lies are when we get fooled a while by them, when we let them go unchallenged, when we connive with them, and why, even when we speak them. There is no mistaking lies. Lies can and do win in bazaars and courts and elections. Blades, bullets and bombs can and do stain India's dawn. But as Ramachandra Gandhi, the philosopher whom so many here knew, said, Gandhi was not stopped by 3 bullets. He stopped those 3 bullets in their tracks. 3 bullets of suspicion, hate, and vendetta. He did stop them. And as he stopped them, his dying word was Rama. That is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Gandhi. I think after that powerful address, we are all experiencing a riot of emotions. We now move into a conversation that promises depth, intellect, and insight. Joining us for this discussion are 3 distinguished individuals: Ms. Aruna Roy, Magsaysay Award winner, author, and socio-political activist; Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, economist, policy architect, and thinker. And moderating the conversation is Mr. Rudrangshu Mukherjee, author, historian, academician, and editor. Let's have a huge round of applause in welcoming them to stage.
Apart from the fact that all 3 of us have known Gopal and know Gopal quite well, there is one other common element. All 3 of us receive honorable mention in Gopal's dispatches from the past. Aruna Roy even has a picture of herself in the book. But I think among the 3 of us, I have known Gopal for the shortest period of time. Montek was in college with him. Aruna was in the Mussoorie Academy with him. I only got to know Gopal very well, I should say, when he came as governor of West Bengal. And I have great memories of evenings in Raj Bhavan with Tara and Gopal, and quite often when Tara wasn't there, with just Gopal and myself. So I'll take advantage of the fact that I've known him for the shortest period of time and start off with a few comments before my 2 friends take over. As a student of history, I was a bit puzzled when Gopal first announced to me the title of this book. I was puzzled by the subtitle rather than the title. I caught the nuances of the title. The subtitle says, A Personal History of Independent India. This sounded to me to be a little problematic. History is supposed to be conventionally understood as being impersonal, objective, bereft of subjectivity. So a personal history seems to me a bit of an oxymoron or a contradiction. Gopal I know, then I started reading the book and I found Gopal invokes Niroj C. Chaudhary, Autobiography of an Unknown Indian, as also a personal history. Now, Nirod Babu being Nirod Babu, those of you who know him, knew him, or have read him, there is more of the personal than of the history in Autobiography of an Unknown Indian. Gopal treads a completely different path. The personal is self-effacing in this book. The history is much more salient and much more important. And the history is also almost always very definite and very precise. I had the sense when I was reading the first pages that, did Gopal keep a diary? Later I found, when I came to the last sections of the book, that indeed he did, because he quotes from his diaries. But how long before did he start keeping the diaries? How was he so definite about dates and precise? With such precision and such definiteness. This history is therefore important. And Gopal, in his opening remarks, read out a statement about how we need to be careful about lies and how we are in our hearts, if not in our public statements, know what are lies, and in our hearts we know what is approximating to the truth. But there's another passage that he didn't read, which is worth, or a line or two, which is worth reading, to point to the importance of this history. We are, Gopal Gandhi writing, we as a people are historically unfastidious and unfussy. Precision, accuracy, and veracity are intellectually exhausting. Vagueness and presumption are intellectually undemanding. Gopal is the exception. There are many interesting facets in this book. I'll just take two relatively unknown. I think Gopal is the first to reveal this. At least the second one, he's certainly the first to reveal this, from two ends of the book. One is the conversation that happened, or the conversations that happened regarding who should be the first president of India. It's not very well known that Sri Raja Gopalachari, Gopal's maternal grandfather, was Nehru's first choice as the president of India. It didn't happen because Rajendra Prasad, as a long-time leader of the Congress from the days of Champaran, had already put in his claims. And Patel thought that it would be very unfair to deny Rajan Babu that position of President of India. This is not something that is recorded in very many history books. The other one is even more dramatic towards the end of the book. And I'm certain this is nowhere else except in this memoir cum history of Gopal Gandhi. It's the late evening of the day Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated. And Gopal has rushed to Rashtrapati Bhavan to be with the president. And while he's with the president, in walks who? T.N. Session, the chief election commissioner. And what does he tell the president? Suspend the elections and make me the home minister. I will bring order to the country. The arrogance of power. And I'm sure my two friends who have known the exercise of power and have known the operations of governance and of administration will have much more to say about this. The book, because it is a personal history, has two heroes. No, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi is not one of the heroes. He was gone when Gopal was only not even 3. Gopal says very clearly the most important influence on his life was his maternal grandfather, Raja Gopalachari, in many very critical and crucial ways. That's one hero. The second hero is a little more surprising. It's Jayaprakash Narayan. My hero of heroes, Gopal says. Okay, so, and this is where I would beg to differ a little bit with Gopal, with due deference, and you know what respect I have for you. He writes, this is the year 1951. India has just become a republic. And I'm reading from page 81. Jayaprakash Narayan, JP, the dashing 49-year-old socialist, a credible alternative to the 62-year-old Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. I hold my hands up. I cannot see Jayaprakash Narayan in 1951, if ever, to be a credible alternative to Jawaharlal Nehru. Gopal, I'm sorry that I cannot agree with this assessment of yours of JP. I said self-effacing, and as if anticipating that, Gopal read out that passage where he described that photograph of Cartier-Bresson, Gopal playing with handful of sand. And he says, that's what my life has been about, meaninglessly playing with sandfall. Authors of personal histories should not make a virtue of exaggerated modesty. Thank you. Aruna.
I'm going to speak about the book partly as a very old friend, shared the same world as Gopal from childhood, but I'm also going to speak as a friend, and I'm going to speak as a woman. And I think one of the most remarkable things about Gopal and his public life as a public intellectual has been the very strong human qualities that he has possessed and exhibited. And I think for those of us who see power in the very strict confines of exercise of power, with arbitrariness, with insensitivity, with no concern for human qualities, Gopu has been one of those extraordinary figures who stood out in public life as somebody who exercised all these and spoke when he should and didn't speak when he shouldn't have, but also spoke the language of compassion. So for me, he's a very special person and has always been there. As I'm sure for many of you in the audience, he has been extremely special. Gopu and I share the years of childhood as well, and I remember as a child living in Delhi, didn't have, I still remember the death of Mahatma Gandhi as a day of great sorrow. And I was very young, and I also didn't know very many great details. It was the day of great sorrow. So somehow the memories of the two of us span the same period. And it's been interesting to see how different it's always also been. Because he grew up in an atmosphere where he interacted with and he was with people who were ruling India. In many ways, people who were associated with people who were ruling India. And I belonged to a social sphere where I saw the impact it was having on people. And so for me, it's been an extraordinary journey in the book, reading both about what people in power actually did, and seeing them close quarters, the human qualities, the interpretation, the humanity of those people, at the same time thinking of what happened to India at that time and who were the people we listened to and what did we do. We've had a trajectory post. Actually, I also studied English literature, and I've seen Gopal in the corridors of the Delhi University faculty, arts faculty. I mean, I didn't know who he was, but I saw him then. So my memories go back to that, but our real friendship began even post the IAS batch, when I went for a settlement training to Tanjavur and met Gopal and his mother. And I went to their house, and from there the friendship grew. And it's been an interesting friendship because we've met on and off, and the book has been extraordinary because it's filled in all the various gaps. Because here I was working, having taken a decision to go and work with poverty and the poor, and seen power from below, and here was Gopal working with power at the helm of affairs. By any system of logic, we shouldn't have been friends because he was in a position where things were being decided and I was in a position where things were being contested. But this friendship grew and lasted through many years. And it is in that relationship of understanding that power has to be used with ethics, used with a fair degree of transparency and a fair degree of compassion, that our two trajectories met consistently over the years. This book is also a wonderful book because it's a history. Pardon me, Rudrangshu, I'm not a student of history, but as I see now, and I live in today's India, seeing how distorted history is, what the narratives are that are circulating, this is an extraordinary book. It brings lived history to people. And I think we are a little tired of historians who tell us what happened in other places or with others' lives. We want to know what happened to you. So the younger generation today is really interested in personal histories. And I think this book is extraordinary, excellent, and extremely important and critical for younger India. Because they will read the story of a young boy who went to modern school, young boy who went to St. Stephen's College, young boy who could not play football but said he did, to Nehru. I mean, there are all small incidents which are very exciting. I'm afraid I can't read because I have problems with my eyes and the print is too fine. Otherwise, I'd read you the parts where he describes his interaction with Nehru, and Nehru asked him, "Do you play games?" And he said, "I play football," which he didn't. So it's interesting to see how all these people we admire from afar actually live. But the tone that really speaks to me in this whole book is the tone of humility, real humility, not so-called humility, humility and the grace with which the whole notion of exercise of authority is seen. And there's a small anecdote, of course, which is not in the book, but which I remember very distinctly when he was in Raj Bhavan, completely regardless of any kind of protocol. I think I landed up with a team of 30, 40 people who were going to a part of West Bengal for a food conference, of which Gopu had to inaugurate, give the first speech the next day. He knew I had come to Kolkata and he said, "You come?" I said, "I'm not alone. I'm with 25 people. He said, "Bring them all." And he sent the Raj Bhavan truck, the gardening truck, to bring us all there. And he personally took us through the Raj Bhavan, and those people who were with me would have never had an experience like that before or after. To be explained the history of India through the Raj Bhavan by a sitting governor who did not behave like one, but talked to them as a friend. It was an extraordinary moment. Though it's not there in the book, I wish it had been there in the book, but it's not there in the book. But what I want to say is that this is the Gopal who peeps at you all the time in the book, whether it is his stint in South Africa, whether it is his stint in Sri Lanka, whether it is days in the IAS, whether it's post that in West Bengal and the famous Nandigram incident, everything, there is that Gopal who spoke for truth, regardless of consequences, and took what came. Though he may not have liked what came, but he still took it. And that's where I think the spirit of Gandhiji and of the kind of moral rectitude that we associate with the Gandhi family, the Mahatma Gandhi family, comes through the book. And I think what I would really like to emphasize is that this book is not only history, but it's a lesson in how to deal with power, with rectitude, with authority, without moving back from responsibilities, but understanding that it's just there for you to keep for others. And you use power for others. And how do you use it for others? And what are your personal limits? And I think the details of the problems that he faced and of his internal questioning and answering is, to me, very interesting, because this is part of Gopu I didn't know very well, and that's come to me. But I will say it's an extremely important book. And I think it's a book that should be read by young people, and I am going to take this book to the young, and I'm going to say to Gopu, please have podcasts, please read parts of the book as you read some of it for us, so that young people can listen to you everywhere. And because people don't read very much, but they still hear things, and I think your beautiful way of talking and rendering your own book is extremely exciting. It's captivating, and I think that's what you should be doing, apart from other things that you do so well. You will have to now do podcasts of the book, so that the young people everywhere listen to you and understand how power and authority and a kind of lineage that comes to us, all of us, and how the legacy has to be dealt with. It's a great lesson to me about the wielding of power, authority, and of responsibilities in governance. Thank you, Gopu, for writing this book.
Montek.
Thank you. Thank you, Rudrangshu. Thank you very much for inviting me to join this on this occasion. You know, I have to say that it's not very often that I am able to say that I agree with everything that Aruna has said. Now, I think she said it much better than I would, so I really want to say that I really do agree with everything she said. You know, when you're speaking at a book release, I mean, some people, you know, the first thing that an audience should be told is it a fun book to read? It is absolutely a fun book to read. To be honest, it's partly the two reasons why it's a fun book to read. One is he writes incredibly well. And as you will see from the book, I mean, he had only a few, 2.5 years before he lost one grandfather, his paternal grandfather, but there were many years that he interacted with his other grandfather, who, according to the book, took a lot of interest in kind of improving his English literature, this and that shows. So Rajaji certainly did a terrific job, Gopu, along with you, and it's a beautifully written book. You know, in a way, sometimes when you read a book, there's a kind of a big message, and you're always struggling, do you like what he's writing, or do you agree with what he's saying? So that can go both ways. I mean, it depends. If you like the message, of course, you think it's wonderful. On the other hand, if you don't like the message, but it's very well written, you won't find it such an enjoyable book. The good thing about this book is, actually there is a message at the end, but you know, each bit of it is really done like a miniaturist. I mean, it's not summarizing everything, but it's telling you very beautifully what that particular period or that particular occasion was, and it's a very fun read. And actually, given that he's watched things through this entire process and been part of it himself, and unlike many books, he's not making any pretext that he's the hero of the story. I mean, when he's in Sri Lanka, he's not making a pretext that he's helping either General Kalkat or whoever and the other fellows on the other side to work out the strategy, but you get a very good sense of the tensions and the problems, etc., that they faced. So I think from that point of view, anyone interested in knowing, and this is really what Aruna said, I feel very embarrassed, because I'm trying to repeat what you say, but saying it differently. Please do. I found it terrific for that reason. That's point number one. Of course, as Aruna has said, there is a message that comes out very clearly at the end. I mean, it's like that old business, I forget who it was, who said, you know, the fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. Well, Gopal Gandhi is both a fox and a hedgehog, because the little things he's telling you about are fun reading, but at the bottom, I mean, there's obviously what he quoted himself, the siyasat and sharafat and the kind of two-way relationship. That's a very big message that comes out, and it's a very relevant message, actually, for this world, given the state that we are in, certainly also the country. But I think one basic thing that also comes out is the, decency. And that, to my mind, it's in a way, you might say, it's a very lowbrow kind of thing to talk about. So it requires a huge amount of skill at the end of the book for the reader to feel, he really has brought out the importance of that. And it's not brought out in one particular context. It comes out time and time again in all the many different things that he describes. So frankly, I strongly recommend the book from that point of view. And I want to say one other thing before I don't know if there's going to be more conversations, but I think I just want to mention this one thing.
Go ahead.
Is that okay? I was aware, of course, that I wasn't looking to the book to tell me very much about what Mahatma Gandhi's kind of thinking, etc., was, because we've been told so much about it. And, in terms of his personal interaction with him, only 2.5 years. So you can't expect whatever you think or know about him wouldn't be that much altered by the book. But I was very keen to read the book because I thought it'll tell me more about Rajaji. In my sort of thinking, he is a hugely underestimated or underappreciated person contributing to the economic discourse on India. And in fact, it's very interesting to see, looking back, what role did he play? How did he interact with Panditji on some of these issues of controls, etc.? He clearly broke away from it. He acted to reflect the fact that he didn't really approve of this excessive socialistic control, even in the days when most people actually were for it. It's a conventional thing that everything was fine, but then in the 1970s it went too bad. But actually that's not true. Rajaji said things were going wrong in the 50s. And I have said before that it's a devastating critique of Delhi University that I went through, and indeed the nice thing about being here is it reminds me of my youth, because all the fellows who were young then are right here now, considerably older. So they can just get up and say you're talking rubbish. But, the interesting thing is that in the mid-50s, it was C. Rajagopalachari who coined the phrase, the license permit Raj. Innumerable economists I know think it was coined by some Western economist critical of the excessive controls which were really damaging the economy visibly in the 1970s. Or at least maybe that's my prejudice. I think they were damaging it quite visibly. The cute thing here is that he was saying this in 1956, and the Congress was not intelligent enough to realize it or reflect on it or think about it. And that story, even if you look at just the economists, I want to make my critique of Delhi University, since there are so many Delhi University people present. We were not given enough, made aware of the fact that B.R. Shenoy had actually written a minute of dissent to the expert report on the second plan by a whole bunch of economists. It was just whitewashed out. So when you say we need to look at history, this is a boring part of history that no one's interested in. But we do need to look at what happened. I mean, how can the first Governor General of India have a view which actually undermines the approach that we are taking and is not a big issue? So, I mean, to me, it emphasizes the fact that there are always different perspectives. And I think that comes out very clearly in the book. And Gopal's, whether it's in South Africa, when he's in London, elsewhere, and so on, that there are different perspectives. These should be brought into the debate. And of course, then people, when they look at it on balance, will choose one or the other. And somehow, I have no idea whether Gopal agrees that this is a worthwhile lesson to get from his otherwise wonderful book. But it was a lesson that I got looking at it just from the economic point of view. And to conclude this part of my remarks, I always, whenever I said, we need to think about this, too much controls, we need to liberalize the economy, people would always quote something from the Mahatma himself, which was the talisman. I mean, I can't be sure that I remember it exactly, but it's something like, whenever the self is too much with you and you are in doubt, I give you this talisman. Think of the poorest person you know and ask yourself, is what you're going to do going to help him? And then your doubts will vanish. And most of these chaps who would tell me this would be under the impression that I would say, oh, of course, if that's the concern, certainly we need controls. But I would say no, because you're assuming that the Mahatma didn't understand economics. I mean, if you took a general equilibrium view, you could very easily argue that what you're doing ostensibly to reduce poverty is actually increasing it, and what you're doing to liberalize the economy may actually reduce poverty. So when the Mahatma said the talisman was not a kind of puri or a pill, it was an invitation to think. And I think this is, to my mind, I'm now going to quote, not from the book, but from Rajaji. Many years after I left university, my wife Isha, she was very into music. I mean, I was internally regarded as the Aurangzeb of the family, but she didn't lose faith, so I was always encouraged to get into it. We had a wonderful long-playing record of M.S. Subbulakshmi, the Bhaju Govindam. And, I remember that CR had a terrific 2-minute introduction to it. So I said to myself, now, can I get that LP? And I asked around, and nobody seems to have it. And nobody has LPs anyway. But then I went to Google, and I said, C. Rajagopalachari on Bhaj Govindam, and out it came. So this is one example of modern, and here is what he said. He said, when intelligence matures, he's talking about the difference between the way of knowledge and the way of wisdom, okay? And what he actually says, the way of knowledge and the way of devotion. And what he says is, when intelligence matures and lodges securely in the mind, it becomes wisdom. Then when wisdom is integrated into life, and issues out as action, it becomes bhakti. Knowledge, when it fully matures, becomes bhakti. If it does not get transformed into bhakti, such knowledge is useless tinsel. And I interpreted that as an invitation that please think, but convert that into some action. The traditional view of bhakti is just being devotion and meditation, nothing to do with action. I think is contradicted here. Now, this is not an area in which I have any expertise, but to me, it struck me as a very important thing that, relatively late in his life, he was actually taking action. I mean, didn't like what the Congress was doing, so he left it and formed another party. That is really, I mean, I enjoyed reading, for this part of it, I tried to glean some of the stuff from the many miniatures that he's painted. But underneath it all, there's no doubt that when you read the book, this basic sense of balance, the sense of decency comes through. And I think he himself mentioned that right at the end, he has I'm not going to read because you should read it yourself. He does talk about a few things that worry him. And my guess is if you read it, I think they'll worry all of us. They should worry all of us. And it's a wonderful 3-page summary of a terrific book. So thank you for letting me speak on this occasion, and congratulations, Gopal, for writing such a great book.
Thank you, Montek. Thank you, Aruna. And above all, thank you, Gopal. I think we'll close today because if we go any longer, there'll be too much bhakti for Gopalkrishna Gandhi. Thank you so much.
I just want to say one last thing, if I may, Rudrangshu. The three of us sitting together here, and Montek and I have been sparring and quarreling a lot, but we are friends. The spirit of that has continued today, and I think this is congratulations to the book for carrying on that spirit and that belief that you can quarrel and still be friends, that you can dissent and still be nationalistic, that you can critique and still continue. I think this panel is proven to some extent because I do disagree with Montek, but I'm not going to argue now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, our panelists, for that thought-provoking discussion. As we move towards the closing of the evening, I would like to thank you all once again for being a part of this meaningful celebration of literature and light. Copies of the Undying Light are available outside the hall, and Mr. Gandhi will be happy to sign them. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Thank you.